moving now to another scale. We are going to go to 100 kilos to 1 ton of carbon footprint. Obviously, travel comes up immediately. New York City to Niagara, 405 miles and back. 53 kilograms if you did it with a bike that you are riding based on a banana diet. Remember that bike can be very eco-friendly, but if your food is all coming from hamburgers and beef and steak and lamb, then obviously you can begin to compete with a vegetarian driving a car or even an SUV, or somebody riding a train, right? So it's going to jump to 66 kilograms CO2 equivalent if you are taking a coach, a bus, 120 kilograms if you are going on a train. Remember that the train has a lot of weight to carry, and per passenger the weight can be much higher. If it fills up and does a few other things, it can actually reduce the carbon footprint. 330 kilograms CO2 equivalent if you are driving a small efficient cars, but again, if you fill the car with more people, you're going to reduce the carbon footprint and begin to be competitive with a train, for example. 500 kilograms, of course, if you fly, which is always the heaviest carbon footprint that transportation mode offers per kg. So it's at 1100 kilograms CO2 equivalent if you drive a large four-wheel drive, which here is more expensive than a plane. Of course, depends very much on the distance you are considering and how many people are flying on a plane and how many people are going in a four-wheel drive, and what the diet of the people traveling is, and so on, right? So do we want to do all those kind of details? You should worry about it, because when we say one person traveling by plane, it's not just up to us. We can just think that when a plane flies anyways, adding another person adds about the body weight equivalent of gasoline, which then can be converted to a carbon footprint. Okay, the next up is Christmas excess, which is very much a Western world thing, but now it is Hallmark holiday everywhere. So 4 kilograms CO2 equivalent per adult in a low carbon scenario, 280 kilograms CO2 equivalent per adult on average in the UK. Okay, it includes traveling, buying things that are not used by the gifting things that are not used or not liked, or there are all kinds of factors that are involved. 1500 kilograms CO2 equivalent per adult if you have a high carbon scenario. A full-on Christmas could cost you a couple of months worth of 10-ton living. Of course, each culture has a festival, typically Festival of Harvest, Festival of Lights, and Festival of Feast tend to be common for all cultures. Diwali in India, New Year's, Chinese New Year, or a cherry blossom festival in Japan, and so on, tend to bring out the people shopping and exchanging presents and so on. Okay, you can hear the chopper going by. But again, as we said before, the cultural value, the societal impact, well-being, social bonding, etc., are externalities that we cannot always count just by looking at carbon footprint. The footprint of Christmas waste, in any case, in the three scenarios adds up like this: kilogram CO2 equivalent per adult. You look at Christmas cards, extra travel involved, either visiting or shopping, unwanted presents, family lights, which makes for beautiful things, but obviously it comes with the energy cost, and wasted food, which is easily something that can be avoided. So in the low carbon scenario, it doesn't register. Average comes out about 350 kilograms CO2 equivalent per adult, and in the high carbon scenario we have that jumping to almost 1500 kilograms CO2 equivalent per adult. Well, we have to celebrate some things in life. The opportunity cost of sacrificing everything and not knowing what the future will bring in terms of, let's say, an environment for your grandchildren has to be accounted for in some way, right? You don't consume something, you sacrifice it, so you have lost the opportunity to enjoy something. That's an opportunity cost, because you're saving something for the future, or you are sacrificing for the future. Okay, insulating an attic. This is something very useful, especially for mid-latitude countries where or it could be even for tropical countries, in terms of avoiding excess heating, which then would require cooling with AC or other things. 350 kilograms CO2 equivalent if it's an outlay for a 3-bedroom house. 35 tons of CO2 equivalent payback over 40 years. So the question of such issues of insulating an attic is, let's say you have an old house, a beautiful house, then you want to retrofit it, and then you want to calculate whether retrofitting will pay back over time. The biggest example of such a retrofit is the Empire State Building in New York, which was extensively retrofit for energy, and they recovered the cost, and they will continue to enjoy the advantage of having retrofitted for energy savings. Okay, the payback of insulating an attic can be a remarkable 3.5 years worth of 10-ton living. Okay, so if you don't insulate, that's how much you are going to end up causing in terms of environmental damage and carbon footprint. So insulating the loft in a 3-bedroom house without a government grant, the money and the carbon. So here is from no insulation to 275 millimeter or 10-inch insulation, and from 50 millimeters existing 2-inch insulation to 270 millimeters. So the cost without a grant, annual payback in terms of energy savings, embodied emissions in the material is the ratio is it's 380 kilogram in each case. Annual carbon savings 880 kilograms. Financial payback with 10% discount rate applied would happen in 4 years, and this 50 millimeter to 270 millimeter never quite makes it. So your additional advantage here is not that strong. Payback period with 10% discount rate applied. So I hope you know what discount rate means. It's essentially how a dollar today will be worth what a dollar today will be worth in a year or 2 years or 10 years. So this is an economic trick where when you invest in something like here in insulating an attic, you're going to have to invest upfront, let's say $775, and you want to know what that investment is worth in a few years. So this is a very tricky thing, because the discount rate can never be agreed upon. 10%, for example, is a very high discount rate, which devalues your investment very quickly. Okay, so the payback period with 10% discount rate applied would happen at $1,400, and here it would be minus $1.75. So I'm not going to bother with the details here. 40-year carbon savings is 35 tons for the case of no insulation to 270 millimeter insulation, and from 50 millimeter to 270 millimeters it's only 10 tons. Okay, so having some insulation already may require more thought as to how much you want to invest, unless you are just trying to be environmentally conscious and don't care about a return on your investment. So some general ideas I picked up from this website, which I should put the link for. Let me pause it and put a link here. Sorry. Okay, so this is where I took these images from. I typically just go to Google and grab whatever I think would be useful for the podcast, because they are not necessarily available in papers and books, but I want to add these sorts of information. So since I always provide a link to the source, I I hope you can find it yourself and the originators of the material don't get upset. Okay, looking to insulating your house, here is what you should know. You are losing energy 26% from the roof, 33% from the walls, 8% is going out the floors, 12% ventilation and drafts, 3% through the door, 18% through the windows. This is for a typical n-bedroom house, let's say. Reducing heat loss in your house, household running costs can really add up, so it's important to try to find ways to alleviate the pressure. Reducing heat loss will not only help lower heating costs, but will also make your home more environmentally friendly and efficient. Okay, so here are some statistics. On average, heating and cooling comprise 54% of homes' annual utility bills. This is obviously quite different depending on where you are and how rich the country is. Typically, people in developing world do not spend so much on heating and cooling, or their heating and cooling methods can be very environmentally unfriendly, sometimes using coal or biomass and so on, cow dung and so on. 10% of your home heating bill cost stems from uninsulated floors. Wall insulation can reduce a home's heat loss by 67%, while attic insulation can lead to a 40% decrease in heating and cooling costs, which we just looked at. Insulating basement walls or slab foundation can reduce heating costs by 10 to 20%, and a home that is well insulated against heat loss can recoup the costs of implementing insulation within 5 to 6 years from resultant energy savings. So there is something called an RValue which is used. It's basically the measure of a material's ability to resist heat flow in and out. So a high R value is desirable when choosing an insulation. An insulation should keep the heat in and should keep the heat out, right? A higher a material's R value, the better it is at resisting the flow of heat and better it is at conserving energy. Here are the R values per inch of some of the common insulation materials. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can see polyisocyanurate, polyurethane, extruded polystyrene, styrene, expanded polystyrene, rigid fiberglass, cellulose blown, fiberglass rock wool bat, and fiberglass blown. I don't know what the differences here are, but you can look them up. How to reduce heat loss? Of course, insulation, chimneys, windows and doors, extractor fan, radiators and curtains, and here are the references. Okay, so finally the materials: cellulose, fiberglass, foam and mineral wool. So many options to choose from, but hopefully you can get a good consultant who can run through these things for you and maybe give you an estimate of your carbon footprint, energy savings, time of recovering the cost on investment, and durability of the installation you are making, and so on. So important thing to worry about if you're a homeowner. Okay.